Imagine a grand city, once dry and ancient, its red walls and carved dragons bathed in golden light. Now imagine that same city swallowed by sudden, surging waters, its temples, its daily life, slipping beneath a liquid mirror. What happens when the heart of an empire offers itself to the flood? And we ask not only how it happened, but what it means for tomorrow. In the valley between mountains and sky, we will trace the genesis of water and stone, the rise of nature's quiet wildlife, the unfolding of human ambition, and now the shock of an event that asks, can the capital of China, that centuries-old symbol, survive when the water comes? Join us as we rise with the rain and descend with the flood and peer into the watery future of a city once thought firm. In the hush of dawn, the mountains to the north of Beijing gather mist like a soft shawl around the city. Over millennia, moisture-laden winds have climbed the slopes, chilled, and released their loads in sheets of rain. The city lies beneath ridges that beckon the clouds, and thus it lives within a basin of possibility, a basin of life, and sometimes of reckoning. Here, in the sweep of time, rivers have carved valleys, and soils have grown fertile. Shifting courses, flooding plains, forging the land. Over centuries, human hands tamed some of this wildness. The city expanded outward. The ancient walls rose. Empires marched in and out. Yet the mountains never ceased beckoning the rain. The rain never ceased remembering the mountains. In that sense, nature built the stage long before humanity arrived. The rain that falls on the ridges becomes the river that flows through the plain. The river that once threatened became the lifeblood of settlement, till it reclaimed its ancient habit of excess. As we look at the city today, we must understand its geological and hydrological cradle. Heavy storms are not new, but those storms danced a different rhythm in the past. The soil knew the pulses, the rivers knew their bounds. But as climate and land use shift, the rhythms change, so the stage tilts. Over the years, the tributaries that drain the mountains into Beijing's basin have met increasing pressure. Urban sprawl, paved roads, rooftops, tunnels of concrete hull, these deny the earth its voice. Rain that once soaked slowly into soil now races, finds the sewers, the drains, the channels, signs nothing but its own urgency. In July 2025, Beijing's meteorological records revealed an astonishing deluge in just a handful of hours. Parts of the region recorded more than 300 millimeters of rain. And in some places, the total over a few days approached what the city usually receives in a year. The city, prepared for heavy storms, was nevertheless caught by one of nature's surges gone rogue. The district of Miyun District northern outskirts, where mountain valleys funnel water, became a stage of sudden ruin. Homes were overwhelmed, roads collapsed, power lines snapped. The city's drainage, designed for the usual, struggled under the unusual. In that moment, the interplay of nature and human works flickered like brittle glass under pressure. From a wildlife perspective, too, the floods forced changes. The forest animals of the mountain slopes, the birds of the streams, the frogs in the wet understory, they all sensed the surge. The floodwaters reshaped their world in ours, their homes submerged, their streams turned into roaring rivulets. Their quiet rhythms, city, of nature, of land, was incremental. But the flood event made it rapid. What was once slow and predictable became swift and unpredictable. In the cinematic sweep of water, the familiar became unfamiliar. Streets that once echoed footsteps now carried driftwood. Parks where children once played were lakes of brown water. Vehicles floated like silent driftwood in the currents. The very monuments of the city stood in silent witness. Their foundations soaked, their facade masked by mud and rain. The command center of the Emergency Management Authority in Beijing activated its highest level response: red alerts, evacuations, suspended travel. Over 80,000 residents were evacuated. Dozens of villages lost power. Roads were washed out. The scale was visible, yet the sense of helplessness was palpable. The city that felt firm underneath suddenly felt afloat. From the vantage of the mountains, the forested slopes shed torrents of water. Streams became swollen. Landslides stole soil, uprooted trees tumbled. The wildlife that once lazed by calm streams found itself navigating rapids. Deer assessing a flooded meadow. Birds seeking higher ground. Insects clinging to blades of grass that now lay submerged. In the basin, the water that entered the city carried more than water, carried debris, silt, the detritus of roads and rooftops, the memories of human habitation, risk and hope. In that swirling cauldron, nature and human world collided. And yet, in the midst of devastation, there was also quiet dignity. Emergency workers slogging through mud, residents helping each other, wildlife slowly reclaiming broken spaces. The flood did not just destroy it, revealed the fragility and the resilience. Beneath the roar of the flood, the quieter story is one of life adjusting, of ecosystems reweaving themselves. On the mountain ridges above Beijing, forested slopes capture moisture. Lichens drip with dew. The streams wind down toward the city. In normal years, amphibians breed in slow-moving pools. In heavy rain, those pools overflow, connecting habitats that seldom meet. Floods, in a paradoxical sense, can bring renewal, but also destruction. Consider the river valley. When water floods the floodplain, it deposits silt, rejuvenates soil, refreshes life. But when human infrastructure dominates, the flood cannot disperse, cannot find its gentle exit. It rages. Nature's design is gentle when it has space. But when space is denied, its fury is focused. The wildlife of Beijing's broader region, birds such as herons in rivers, mountain goats or deer on ridges, foxes in valleys, feel the change in the land. When forests are disturbed by landslides, their cover is stripped. When rivers are dammed or channeled, their migration patterns shift. When floodwaters surge, they are displaced. The flood event, in this sense, is not just human tragedy, it is a moment of ecological reckoning. In the wake of the waters, we might see new pools of standing water that attract waterfowl. We might see tree falls that open light into forest understories. We might see invasive species colonizing newly bare soils. The flood resets the board. But whether it leads to renewal or chaos depends on resilience of both nature and human systems. The city of Beijing is not separate from nature, was built in dialogue with it, and now it is in confrontation with it. The temples and palaces, the great tiled roofs, the wide avenues, they stand on land that once belonged solely to earth and sky. When the flood comes, it reminds us that the human story is part of a larger cycle. In the flooded districts, residents found themselves neighbors of the river once more. Immune houses that seemed permanent were built beside streams that remembered how to rush. The emergency alert, the evacuation, the relief fall, these are human responses to the deeper systems of water and land. Yet the flood also shows us how human choices matter. Infrastructure design, land use planning, emergency readiness, climate adaptation, these are not abstract, they are the hinge on which safety turns. The city's drainage, its reservoirs, its forested slopes, its relocation policies, in a sense, these are its nature interfaces. From the wildlife side, the city's edges are where animals still roam. The mountains and forests around Beijing are habitat corridors. When the flood invades human spaces, it also pushes animals to new ground. The fox looking for higher ridge, the bird seeking an unflooded tree, the amphibian scattering from torrents. By integrating human systems with natural systems, by seeing ourselves as part of the water cycle, as part of the mountain valley river city continuum, we can perhaps write a new story where flood is not just disaster, but a signal to adapt. In this cosmic earthly frame, the flood is both micro and macro, a local disaster, yes, but also part of the planet's water cycle, part of shifting climate patterns, part of our collective future. What will happen next? For Beijing, and for cities everywhere, perched beneath mountains or alongside rivers, the flood offers questions more than answers. Will the city adapt its drainage systems? Will it restore forest cover on its slopes? Will habitats around the city be protected and integrated into its planning? Will wildlife corridors be acknowledged so that animals are not simply victims, but participants in the urban nature mosaic? Climate scientists say extreme rainfall events will become more frequent as the planet warms. The topography that once softly soaked rain might now turn it into a rush. The mountain-valley system that once balanced water may now amplify it. Beijing, in its flood, is a signal. In the human ecosystem, adaptation is the key word. Urban planning that acknowledges water as a living system. Forest slopes designed to capture and moderate rainfall. River valleys allowed to flood safely. Wildlife spaces recognized as part of the city's well-being. Schools prepared for extreme weather. Communities connected to ecosystems. The city only rebuilds for containment, walls, pumps, barriers. Then it may always fight the next flood. But if the city rebuilds for symbiosis space where water can move, where ecosystems can breathe, then the next flood may not feel like a disaster, but like a challenge to live differently. In the celestial scale, water has no respect for boundaries. It flows, collects, returns to sky as vapor drops again. We are small participants in that cycle. The flood reminds us that our cities, our wildlife, our nature are part of that great turn of water and time. As the sun dips behind the ridges, the floodwaters recede, but the memory remains. The city stands, drenched and renewed. The animals stir again. The forest whispers of resilience. The river settles into new paths. In the end, our story of Beijing's flood is not just about submergence. It is about awakening to the power of water, to the interdependence of nature and human endeavor, to the subtle hum of life beside, around us. So let us watch the rain. Let us soften our steps on the land. Let us listen to the rivers and the forests and the city alike. Because when waters rise again, we will need to remember the city was built on land, but lived because of nature. And in that remembering lies our hope, our invitation to coexist, to adapt, to understand that the future of the capital is not isolated in its walls, but anchored in the dance of earth, water, sky, and life.